stuff too, but yeah. But anyway, yeah. What about it?
Because he made the claim that the best music consistently comes from the next generation of creatives, so those looking to take risks, shake up the status quo, aesthetically or socially. Conservatism by its very nature.
Wait, hold on. Can you link me these tweets? I just want to read to make sure that I'm getting the actual.
Yeah. So I mean, fair enough, but culture or whatever, so you're going to have more change. But one thing, I don't think you're changing if you're changing to conservatism from progressivism, so that's still a change. But one thing I was thinking about this take was historically, wasn't it the case that some of the best art, like, you know, Bach or Wagner, I know they're not as relevant today, but that was literally like paid for by the aristocracy and the elite, like it was made to appease the status quo.
Yeah, so there's a name for this. I always forget, and this one guy came on and he had such a great talk with me. There's a name for, can somebody tell me, there's two, it's like there's vernacular music and then there's something else music. It's vernacular versus something else, but is it cultivated? I don't know if that's the right one. Secular versus vernacular?
I couldn't tell you.
Yeah. So basically there's like, it might be vernacular and cultivated. So basically there are two types of music. The music that we tend to listen to today, I believe, is vernacular music. So it gets popular because people listen to it and they like it, and artists produce it because they want to, or they make money or whatever out of it. And that's kind of what, that is what the music of today tends to be. Now, way back in the past, that it was not the vernacular music, I think. It was like cultivated music. I don't know if these are the two right terms, but it's the general idea is that back in the day, when you're listening to like all these very famous operas or all of these big, you know, the sonatas and the compositions or whatever, these things were made because they were commissioned specifically by royalty or like the aristocracy specifically to be listened to by like royalty and, you know, the upper class people. They weren't, it wasn't like this vernacular, it wasn't this like fun music that everybody was dancing to in clubs and stuff. So yeah, I think that that's generally true. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because I had a back and forth with him on this, and I wanted to see if, from someone who has actually studied music, how off my takes are, because Fantano is making it sound like I'm absolutely mental to have these takes. Well, he more so gets into this next one, which I just sent you. I mentioned that Frank Sinatra was a big conservative, donated to Ronald Reagan's campaign, right? And,
just fucking talk about Kanye, no?
I mean, feel free to let me know if you completely agree with him or whatever, because I'm genuinely curious.
But Frank Sinatra, yeah, he also I know he worked with a lot of political people. He also worked with FDR's campaign as well, but yeah, but then he also worked with Reagan too, yeah. And Truman.
It was a bit of a mixed bag because he was also a bit of a like he would not sing at places and he would not sleep at hotels that would not let black guests attend or stay there or sing. So he also had some like progressive aspects to him for sure.
I mean, he recorded albums with Count Basie and Duke Ellington. Like, yeah, I mean, that's not surprising at all. Yeah, of course.
So Fantano says, of course, Lauren, the great replacement Southern's go-to jazz singer, is the definition of limited range and presentation over ability. Plus, he didn't even write his best stuff. He didn't care about the cultural context of jazz, which is why he gave that money to racist Ronnie.
That's just the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. There's just so much stupid with it. Like I said, unfortunately, like his music takes are generally okay, but when it gets political, his brain like just melts. I don't know what. I'm pretty sure Sinatra is like literally one of the best-selling artists of all time, and trying to attack somebody on their vocal range, what a stupid fucking thing to attack somebody on. Like, there are so many different things that can make a singer great to an audience besides their range. Like, it's really weird for somebody like him to turn into an elitist over musical, adeptness over like an instrument or vocal range, when so much of what we listen to in popular culture isn't done by, you know, the most talented professional vocalist. It might just be done by somebody that writes really good lyrics or makes really good songs or, you know, has a really unique voice. It doesn't have to be the most like performatively, adept person in the world. That's insane. That's so stupid.
Okay, that's so therapeutic to hear. I was genuinely like questioning myself. I was like, am I just, because he says that I know nothing about music, I'm just a grifter, fuck off, like I don't understand it. And I was like, am I genuinely just not understanding this? Because to me, I feel like if I brought up the point to someone like Fantano, oh, I don't think rap music is music because it doesn't have this chord and that chord and, you know, some
Shifty, thank you for gifting a sub.
Bullshit snobbery about classical music. He would
come on, Dank Demon, let's keep it above the cuff.
Art, you know? But so I'm not sure, like you said, if this is just a big flip point, but he says, so I was like, you can't just write a great artist out of canon. I sent you the tweet there because you don't like their politics. Sinatra was a man of many talents. Dude won an Oscar without acting even being in his main field. However, if he doesn't suffice, you know, you've got Lovecraft, Tolkien, the rest of them, and he responds saying, here are my words, there are no other words. No serious jazz singer looking to hone their craft is taking notes from the king of glorified lounge acts. Ella and Billy had his ass any day. You know nothing about music, you're just a professional grifter, fuck off. Fitzgerald loved Frank Sinatra, performed with her. And yeah, he said, but her technicality proficiency over Frank is not up for debate.
Here are my words,
dummy. So it's just I wanted to know.
I can't. This honestly, you would never be able to tell Fantano's tweets on this situation came from somebody that anybody held in high regard as a music critique. Imagine just throwing out all of these fucking great musicians just because they were like racist.
Someone who actually knows music, whether I was super off base here or if it's fair to say Frank Sinatra is a good artist.
Well, I mean, yeah, this is like, love him or hate him, like, he sold an ungodly amount of records. I'm pretty sure he's one of the most sold people of all time, or at least he was at one point in his life. I'm pretty sure he had multiple successful, like he was in multiple good movies, and I think he did like a TV series on his life or whatever.
Manchurian Candidate.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, Manchurian Candidate. He did, and he's like, yeah, he's won like an Oscar. Yeah, I don't know. That's like some brain rot. I mean, I think it's totally valid to say certain things like you can argue somebody is like overrated in a public, like so I used to be a saxophone major, right? So Kenny G has sold like fucking more albums than probably every fucking saxophone player combined, and saxophone players hate him. And there's an argument there where it's like, oh, it's appealing to the lowest common.
Politically provoked. It's not that you can't talk. I'm assuming you're Brittany. It's not that you can't talk about, you know, your fear that like not being racist to people will make people racist to you. It's not about that. You can't talk about that. The issue is when your entire political philosophy starts shifting around an idea that is that white people are going to get stepped on in the future if any group of people get any group or any amount of power in America, and that you start peddling memes that propagate that like white people never rape black people, but black people rape white people at high rates. And then you say, well, he's got numbers. I haven't looked at it. I haven't really looked deep into it. But there's numbers attached to his tweet. Like, there's two realities, all right? One, you got the mask on, right? Or two, you are just so incredibly fucking stupid that you're being a useful idiot for somebody. And I just refuse. I refuse to believe that you're that fucking stupid. Maybe I'm wrong. I could be wrong. But the benefit of the doubt has firmly come and gone. If you're looking for some Vaush debate pointers to cheer you up, you should watch the Stitch and Adam Ahrelevant stream with Counterpoint, Doomer Media, Mahler, where the guy analyzing Vaush's bad faith gaslighting you line by line and have empathy for you. Since 11 is a bit sleep, I can recommend a good point to hop in where Mueller joins in 5 hours in.
Did you?
Oh no, I'll probably get canceled for watching this shit. I think I remember these people are these people are slightly conservative. Uh-oh, here it comes. Chat, how far into the vid are we? I missed Destiny's stream from the other day. I was waiting to watch this with Relly. We are fucking 9 minutes in. The Fantano shit is wild.
Blah, blah, blah. You can make that argument. But to just say like, oh, it sucks and it's bad and it's horrible and everyone else is better, you just sound salty and a little bit stupid. Like, I don't know.
So I was like, does he genuinely believe this? Because I tried to look through his videos, and I think he's had ones where he said Sinatra is overrated based on talent. But I'm like, can you genuinely say he is not a great artist? And is that just coming from like bizarre wanting to initial point that no one who could possibly have conservative views could ever be creative, interesting, funny, or empathetic? Like, yeah, okay, that's. I
think you can make the thing is, and maybe because I do this dumb shit all the time, so I'll be a little bit empathetic towards Fantano, even though he hates me and he's a fucking loser. Like sometimes I'll have like a point and I'll make it.
Wait.
I think that due to lifestyles, you and me probably both agree that more boundary-pushing music and art stuff tends to come out of more socially liberal people.
I'm still
just because they tend to be the ones involved in that stuff more than socially conservative people.
Nice.
I think like if somebody were to make that type of general statement, I think that's pretty easily defensible and not too controversial. But then when you step a little bit further into the like no conservatives will ever make good art or have ever made good art, you've taken a take that's like almost certainly correct into something that is absolutely wrong. Like, which is but
yeah, that's what's disappointing is there are actual like I'm pissed off with conservatives. They spent so long telling young conservatives, young people in general, like you can never get an art degree. Getting an art degree is
makes
always
you a loser
the
and
decision.
blah, blah,
Yeah, it makes you a loser. Getting into the arts, you always have to be a tradie, and then it's like, oh my gosh, we can't believe the left have won the culture wars. How did this happen?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, there's completely legitimate critiques to make there. Okay, I just wanted to check that I wasn't totally off base there. Vaccine mandates. This was a shower thought I had the other day. It was after our debate we did on systemic racism, so this is a bit of a long while ago that I was thinking of this, but I'm sure you've heard now that BLM are protesting vaccine mandates due to the fact that it affects black people in particular since they don't want to get vaccinated. It's something like almost half, or 40%, something like that, of young
tweet is 14
Americans in New
hours
York are not vaccinated. Therefore, they are disproportionately
Duckers.
impacted by the vaccine mandate. Does that make it systemically racist based on the definition of systemic racism that you provided last time?
with the way that it's targeted, yeah, I think you could argue that, sure.
So do you support the mandates?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so would that follow then that systemic racism isn't necessarily bad in all cases and can just be the effect of people's personal decisions?
Affected people's personal decisions.
I would probably say systemic racism, in many ways, when you're dealing with political policy as it exists, with it currently existing, it becomes hard to make laws that are completely void of systemic racism, and so I think I would just say that, like, by and large, because it's unavoidable.
It's a weird way to phrase it, but I mean, like, there might be some things that systemically target certain groups of people, but it might not necessarily be a bad thing. I guess it would like demand a deeper analysis of the particular thing being discussed.
Right.
I don't think they want to talk right now. They were just like, where can I connect so we can talk later? Cool. I'll just sit in here
your
then.
problem with how people define it as systemic racism, because the term systemic racism makes it inherent, or is being mentioned, is bad. Yeah, I was just curious about that, because obviously we had that conversation. Oh, what was the other guy? Fanatic. And we were talking about, you know, how African Americans are generally stopped more by police or arrested more or imprisoned more. And I think when we talk about something like mandates, which certainly a lot of people on the left, not to say you're on the left, I know you're the furthest right streamer on Twitch now that you're back.
Thanks.
Yeah. But there's this kind of implication that if it affects Black people at a disproportionate rate and it has a negative outcome, that it's systemically racist, and systemic racism is evil and needs to be stamped out. So if a lot of leftists support the mandates, but it is systemically racist, does that mean systemic racism is excusable sometimes when it supports leftist causes?
I think that when you look at something and you call it systemically racist, there's like a lot we have to disentangle here. So first of all, I try not to use the words like evil or...
I wonder what he's going to say in response to this. I mean, my response is, like I said, it's really hard to make any law in a system that is systemically racist that will not be, by and part, in some way, systemically racist. So, in its application, that is. So, that means that if that's the case and what have you, that you still need to make laws. There could still be laws that are beneficial given that outcome. So, yeah. You just need to be mindful of that.
Like morally good or whatever. What I'm
talking about. Just try your best to not propagate it and hopefully remove it.
About these types of things, it loads everything down like quite a bit. I don't even know if I tend to divorce that type of language from like policy conversations. So when we look at something that is like systemically racist and we're trying to figure out like if this is like a good thing or a bad thing, I think you have to look at the end, like what is the effect that you're trying to achieve or accomplish, and then if that effect is something that's like beneficial for society, then we can say, okay, well, this isn't a bad thing. Or if it's something that doesn't seem to have a beneficial effect but might even have a detrimental effect, especially against a certain group of people, then we might say, okay, well, that's a bad thing. So like systemically racist things that have like detrimental effects towards groups of people are probably not good, but there's probably like some, we can argue like systemically racist. If we say things that like welfare or food stamps is systemically racist because it like disproportionately impacts Black people, I mean, like, I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing if that is the case. You just have to look at like what is the effect at the end of the day.
Right. I see what you're saying, but the effect in this case, like there's a mandate that's been put in, and it's like if you don't follow this, then there's certain punishments, and the effect is that African Americans don't get to eat at restaurants and are more likely to be kicked out of restaurants than white people. So I think I see what you mean by it's like you could see the vaccine being a positive thing, certainly if you're looking at it from a pro-vaccine position, but certainly conservatives, when they look at policing, would say more
Take
people
back
following
what
the
you
law
said
is
about other
positive
weebs.
effect.
No,
but the outcome of people not following the mandate is more African Americans incarcerated, more confrontations with police, et cetera, et cetera. So there is still technically a negative outcome for African Americans from the mandate.
Yeah, but then the question is like, is the negative outcome better or worse than the than what the mandate like purports to do? Right?
Katie, you're gonna be left hanging.
So if locking some people up but increasing vaccination rates is probably something that we would say, societally speaking, is probably like a good thing.
But also reducing crime rates, everyone would agree, is a good thing, right?
Everybody wants to reduce crime rates, but the problem is that sometimes a lot of the conservative thoughts on reducing crime rates doesn't actually reduce crime rates. So, like for instance, like having the death penalty doesn't seem to work as a deterrent to crime, because when people are committing crimes, they don't usually think they're going to get caught. So like the deterrent doesn't really make much sense there unless it's like immediately available. Or like 3-strike laws, or like locking people up and then like cutting off like reproductive rights from women so they have children in single parent households and other shit also doesn't seem to be very productive towards like preventing crime rates. There are some things that we know like, hey, this like works well in terms of preventing crime.
Stop and frisk reduced crime rates. Would you agree with that though?
I don't think so. I think it ended up being an incredibly expensive program. I don't think that the results from stop and frisk were that good. I know that people argue that some forms of like broken windows policing might have helped, and I think spot policing helps. So like having a lot of cops in areas with like high traffic crime. But the biggest problem with stop and frisk, the problem when people start to like indiscriminately do things, is we always have to view things from like a cost perspective. Like, is the cost worth it? And I think stop and frisk just ended up occupying like so much officer time and shit that the hit rates were so low on these things, it just didn't work out that well.
Okay, so it's just about a cost-benefit analysis with whether something Sorry, it's complicated because obviously I'm trying to determine here
Baba, I
what
don't
is
think
and
I
what
did.
isn't systemic racism and what makes systemic racism bad in what cases. So
I don't think it matters to like get caught up on like the term. I know that a lot of people like to screech and scream about like evil and good and systemic. But I think it's just like if there's like segments of society that are unfairly and unduly targeting certain people, we should probably seek to alleviate that. Like not everything in society is going to be 100% equal or good, but like if there are some parts that are like unfairly maligning certain groups of people and there doesn't seem to be a good reason for that, then you change those things, I think.
Right, but if the definition, okay, so I'm not saying this is necessarily you, but amongst a lot of policymakers, amongst a lot of commentators, there is this pursuit of we need to get rid of systemic racism, and they, not saying you once again, they would typically believe that systemic racism itself is inherently bad, and if the definition of systemic racism is simply a policy which negatively affects Black people to a disproportionate rate, which is the definition that either you or Fanatic gave me when we were having that discussion, then would it not follow that, especially if there are certain policies that could be considered systemically racist that actually have a positive effect on society, that we really need to have that conversation about? Actually, this is really complex and nuanced and not all.
Well, yeah, I mean, like you can argue that
bad.
things like so I'm not going to necessarily think like the way these have been not implemented, the implementation of things, but like affirmative action, you can argue is like a form of, in a way, like a systemic racist preference for like a certain group of people.
No, because that would positively affect minority groups, right?
Oh, sure. So I guess it depends on if the vaccine thing, if you think it positively, well, because the argument is that like a mandate forcing people to get vaccinated will positively affect them, but you're looking at like the punishment side of it as being like a negative effect.
If there's a disproportionate negative effect against this minority group, right? Yeah. I see what you mean, as in there's both sides, but like once again, that could be the conservative argument. Like a lot of conservatives will argue, actually, it's African Americans calling police to be in their communities because they're the victims of crime. They want less crime. They want more people put in jail. They want more. They want the 3 strikes law. There are a lot. In fact, you know, I've gone and reported in some of these communities with rioting in the States before, and there are a lot of very, very conservative Black Americans that are like, yeah, we want more enforcement of these laws because we are disproportionately affected by crime. So that's the same argument that could be made for the crime crackdown as well.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to like look at the policy. I guess I'm not like I don't care as much about like the macro level obsession of like the culture war aspect of like, is this systemically racist or not? Like, I think broadly speaking, it's good to keep these things in mind. But like any policy you look at is like, well, what's the cost, and then what's the effect, and then like who's affected by it. Like, I think these are the things that are the more important things to look at. And then like you'll kind of like develop some macro understanding of systemic racism by going.
Wait, is this really one of the topics? Hold up.
But
we're gonna start skipping.
Where because
I have way too much shit to watch today.
Fanatic with assumption about what your thoughts were on it, which is why I think you got a bit mad at me for what did you say? You said it was
well, because every single time you phrase my position, you do it in the most like dogmatically strawman dipshit version possible. Where you're like, okay, Steven, so you think that every single fucking cop is a racist fucking murderer that wants to lynch Black people? So that's what you said, right? It's like, no, what the fuck? I didn't say that at all.
Okay, here, I'll tell you why. Because I assumed going into the conversation that we had a massive disagreement, right? And that's like my internet debate brain,
which is fine.
Yeah,
I've argued with a lot of left-leaning people over like what is systemic racism, and there are a lot of left-leaning people out there that will tell you, oh, systemic racism means that all the cops are racist and all the criminal justice is racist, which is not true. But you know what? I would even go as far as to say it wouldn't surprise me if the majority of online left-leaning people thought that systemic racism meant that all the cogs were racist, when it explicitly is supposed to mean no. It means that the whole system could be racist without a single individual racist actor. That's why it's systemic. But so yeah, I don't blame you necessarily for having that, but obviously you have to engage it.
I should have clarified. I should have asked more
hot
questions.
Take. I like Lauren. Why?
That I thought about that a lot afterwards because I was like,
I'm not saying you're like a piece of shit for it, just why?
I mentioned to you after in chat, I was like, that's not something I want to do and not something I'm doing intentionally. But because my brain, I'll be real, my brain is so used to debating with like hardcore leftists, like almost comical versions of leftists all day on Twitter. In real life, sometimes, you know, sometimes that assumption takes over of what someone else's position is, especially when they accept a debate on the subject. There's always an assumption of you have taken, yes, we need to end systemic racism viewpoint, which means you have the same view as all of these other people, which is kind of funny because I suppose a lot of leftists do that to me as well. They assume because I'm a conservative that clearly I have XYZ opinion.
Yeah, but like I have the same problem sometimes where I'll talk to somebody and then I realize like 10 minutes into the conversation, it's like, hold on, I have to ask you like 20 questions because I don't actually know what you believe. I made some bad assumptions, yeah.
Yeah, okay, well I think you've got a far more reasonable take on systemic racism than I initially thought. Broader conversation on vaccine mandate. When do you think all of this mandate, lockdown, the rest of it is going to end? How does it come to a close / does it ever come to a close?
I mean, do we still have in the United States, like, weren't there, I think there were state-by-state guidelines for when to reopen depending on what infection rates were. I don't know when, I mean, at some point it's going to, because either everybody is going to be like immune enough that we're okay, or we're just going to start to accept like some much higher levels of seasonal death to diseases. I don't know when that is or what the conversation is about when that is. So.
I think you guys, literally yesterday I saw the news that the US had opened its borders to Canada.
Nice.
Not sure if it's, so that's great. That's nice. What do you think? I'm curious. I just had a debate the other day, and this was part of the reason I was wanting to talk to you before it, because I wanted to get your thoughts, since I don't actually know a lot of the actual leftist I'm sorry I always portray you as a leftist, but you're more left-wing than me, or liberal-leaning position
Sure.
on
To be clear, I'm
mandates.
very far left compared to you, but go ahead. Yeah.
And very far right compared to everyone else.
Yeah, but okay,
But
go ahead.
I was debating Big Papa Fascist. I think you've done a few debates with him as well on the mandates. I'm personally against the mandates. I think it should be up to you. But there is this perception amongst a lot of right-wingers at the moment that if you ever comply with the mandates, even if you're going to lose your job, even if you feel like you have no choice, like you're the only family member, maybe this is exaggerating his opinion, but if you comply for any reason just to keep your job, then you can't possibly be against mandates. And that was what the debate was over. I think there are some people that really just have no choice and they have to comply with the mandates because they're in a difficult life position. And I know a lot of people like that. Oh, where was I going with this? I had a question, but I've lost it in my peach snaps here. Sorry.
Was it? Is it if I agree with that or not, or?
Yeah, answer that. Well, I try to remember what my question was because I actually had a. Yeah, do you agree with that? I'll just ask that for now while I try to remember what I was.
Wait, fuck. Can you repeat the last part of that again?
Yeah, it was. You can.
Oh, never mind. I remember. Yeah.
You can only
No, yeah,
that's
that's
non-compliance.
Yeah,
Essentially.
this is absolutely true if you're like fucking 12. But if you're an adult, usually you have other responsibilities that supersede your desire to be a Twitter protester. If you've got like a family that relies on you, it's probably not responsible for you to be like, fuck you, I'm gonna quit my job and we're gonna go live on the streets because you have other people that are relying on you. Maybe you can make stronger arguments for people that have alternatives, but to say that like everybody, right?
Okay, my whole chat are saying no. No, it does not reduce.
So yeah, so the reason why people say this is
objectively.
because some reasons conservatives have brain rot when it comes to probability, and they'll come out and they'll say like vaccinated people can still spread the vaccine, which is the same thing as saying people that wear seatbelts can still die in car accidents. Yeah, of course, none of it is 100%, but the goal is like reductions.
No, that's what I was saying. I was saying it reduces symptoms, not so like what your example there is like a person with a seatbelt can still get into an accident, but they're less likely to go flying through the windshield. But the point here is that you can still get into the accident. That's exactly what I said. Yeah. You can still catch COVID, but it just reduces symptoms.
Sure, but I think it's supposed to reduce the likelihood of getting infected as well. Like you can.
Does it?
Yeah.
Because I genuinely, even from mainstream sources, it's just kind of said it reduces your symptoms and the likelihood of severity.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure, like, I don't know. Maybe, I don't think she's doing this intentionally, but yeah.
Wait, that was the entire point of the.
Yeah, I was going to say,
there's increase of viral load.
Like, I guess I would probably ask her at this point then, does she think getting corona or any other like kind of illness reduces your chance of getting that illness again? Not reduces your symptom, but reduces your chance. If like the answer is yeah, then like there you go. And the reason why is because in many of these things, it's a similar process. That's what it's trying to emulate. But also, it's if it wasn't the case, right, for the vaccine, that would be the headline of every single fucking Fox News thing ever. It just reduces symptoms. It doesn't reduce chance. But immunization does. The only way to keep yourself safe from COVID is to get COVID.
Some people.
Okay, I don't know anything about that. So
there's an Oxford one. Feel free to debunk me. I'll find it here for you.
Yeah, okay. The preprint culture right now is crazy on random shit being said. Okay, number one. But number two, the whole point of the phase 3 trials was to illustrate that there was like a relative risk reduction of people that were infected that got vaccinated. That's like the whole point. If the infection remains the same, then they would never pass phase 3 trials because you wouldn't be able to show like a therapeutic effect or whatever for the vaccine. There would be no reason to get it. That's like the whole thing of like getting the emergency use authorization and then getting the FDA approval for it is to show that there's a reduction effect. Otherwise, why would it have FDA approval? Unless you think that's all it hopes to.
Well, no. I was saying I thought the point was if you're less likely to get in the ICU, then you're less likely to fill up the ICU, and that was the point, not necessarily that it stopped the spread, which is why they still have vaccinated people wear masks wherever they go.
Well, I mean, everybody should wear masks because you still take like more and more precautions because the more that you stack, the better it is. Like just because you have a seatbelt on doesn't mean you don't have airbags. Just because you have airbags in a seatbelt doesn't mean you don't have a car that crumples in the front instead of just being a steel frame, right? Like, yeah, but I mean, you can go look at the phase 3 trials, whatever. You can look at like risk of infection, or whatever. But the whole point of getting vaccinated was that the relative risk compared to unvaccinated people is lower of actually getting infected initially.
So it's okay. Do you have the study on that? I'm genuinely asking this stuff. I'm just on a kind of
really,
more libertarian-leaning conservative level. I am against the level of state overreach that has gotten in.
Faster, Destiny, faster. We must break the speed of light.
If you don't want to get it, that's my opinion. But I'm in a position where I am probably going to have to ever see my family again because of some of the mandates. So I really, I want to understand what's going on here. I want to get it. And
wait, has she not gotten it yet? Oofta.
So much politicization of what's going on that I can really understand why people are so nervous. I'm nervous myself. I'm not sure. Did you see what happened with Sputnik 5 in the European Union? I'm not sure if you know anything about this.
Nope. What happened?
Okay, so Sputnik 5 was the Russian vaccine. Apparently it's shown pretty good in trials, but because...
No way. The Russian vaccine is called Sputnik 5. That has to be a meme, right?
The European Union obviously have a bit of beef with Russia, and there's the whole perception of Russia bad. They won't recognize it as people being officially vaccinated, so there are tons of people in countries like Hungary.
Wasn't that the name of a rocket? It is. It literally means satellite? Oh, does it? Why the fuck do you have a vaccine called satellite?
Afford some of the Western vaccines and got Sputnik 5, and now they can't travel within the European Union despite being double back because it's not considered it's not considered vaccinated just based on policy.
Microchips.
Apparently, from what I've been reading and friends that I've been talking to, it's just purely because of kind of anti-Russian propaganda. That sort of politicization is what makes me nervous.
So I would have, okay, so I gotta be so careful because so much of this information is split. So if I had to guess what you're saying right now, and I don't know this, so this is a complete total guess.
Yeah.
America called it warp speed. Well, America didn't call the coronavirus or the vaccine warp speed. They called the system to get to the vaccine warp speed. All right? Get your facts straight.
Although I'm guessing it's probably about on the level of what you're saying, okay? Is it the case that the Sputnik vaccine is a bit newer and they're still waiting for the final data to roll in on that, and that's why
it was actually the first released, and they were saying that they were worried about how fast it was made. It was actually
I don't,
talking points that conservatives made.
I don't care about release date. What I'm worried about is the data available yet to show that it's actually like efficacious in a manner that is consistent with what we want out of a vaccine. That's what I'm asking. I don't know if that's the case or not. Because with the mRNA vaccines in the United States, that's what we waited for final FDA approval. It didn't matter when they were released, when they were made. It was when did those phase 3 trials end with all sorts of people to show like the safety risks and the efficacy of the vaccine. That's what we're waiting on, not just when it was released.
Right. Okay, let me just quickly read. Okay, so this is.
Oh, this is like the
never
CDC
mind,
page that
Pete.
shows that like the risk of infection is decreased. This was back in June, which I think was related to like the FDA approval. But I mean like there's like tons. You can get on Google Scholar. I can find you more stuff.
Okay, so vaccination makes illness milder, shorter for the few vaccinated people who do get it. So this was. So wait, does this talk about it reducing spread, or is that just about? Because that's from the. This is just a headline, but does it talk about reducing spread in here?
Hold on, let me read through the whole thing. 1 second.
Because that's also what I was saying. I was saying from what I've heard, the vaccine makes it milder, but it doesn't. So it said other study findings suggest that fully or partially vaccinated people who got COVID-19 might be less likely to spread the virus to others.
Yeah, I now see what you were meaning there, Chatter. Like this is not the same argument. It's not. There's two separate arguments. One, your resistance to getting it if you're vaccinated, and two, your ability to spread it if you're vaccinated to another person. And she's looking at the latter. Unfortunate. Very unfortunate.
So this is, for instance, saying, I'm reading where you're at.
She
For example,
changed
fully
it.
or partially vaccinated study participants had 40% less detectable virus in their nose, i.e. a lower viral load, and the virus was detected for 6 days fewer, i.e. viral shedding, compared to those who were unvaccinated when infected. In addition, people who were partially or fully vaccinated were 66% less likely to test positive for SARS-CoV-2 infection for more than 1 week compared to those who were unvaccinated.
So it still says might. From my understanding.
Yeah, so here, to be clear, hold on. To be clear, the reason why these say might, okay, is because when you're working in a scientific world, you can't just look at an underlying mechanism and then have proven the medication. That's not how this works. For a really good example of brain rot on this, ivermectin is a great example. Ivermectin is something that might help with SARS-CoV-2 infections, but we have no idea because there's no good data on it yet. And the reason why it might help with SARS-CoV-2 infection is because if you pump the fuck out of a petri dish with cells in it with ivermectin, you can see that there is some inhibition of the virus to penetrate the nucleus of the cell because ivermectin interferes with cargo transport for different types of mRNA strands. So that's like a might thing. But it seems like when people have things they like, that might becomes a will definitely, like in the case of ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine. But when it comes in the case of vaccines, we're looking at published literature, of course, it's going to say something like might. So for instance, let's say that I develop a new treatment and I show that I can reduce the size of a cancer tumor by 50%. When I publish a study doing that, I can never say this will reduce the likelihood of dying from cancer. All I can say is it reduces the tumor size by 50%, so it might reduce the risk of dying from cancer, because you don't actually know that. So like when you scroll up here and you read this, it seems like it does reduce the viral load and it does reduce the amount of viral shedding, which is consistent with, I think it says influenza up here, and that like, well, that for influenza, that means that you don't spread as much, but you would have to actually do a study showing that to demonstrate that.
I don't like those memes.
Okay.
I'm not a fan of those.
I'm not going to sit here and pretend to be a vaccine expert. I know my
Let's
lane and
not
I'm going
do
to stay
that.
in it. So what I actually kind of more wanted to talk about was.
Well, I'm real quick.
No, it's okay.
And reading this up here too, like this, because I read past and then you started reading it. You were like paragraph 4 or 5. It seems like the early ones up here, like findings from the extended time frame of the study add to the accumulating evidence that mRNA COVID-19 vaccines are effective and should prevent most infections, but that fully vaccinated people who still get COVID-19 are likely to have milder, shorter illness and appear to be less likely to spread the virus to others. So like it does seem that it reduces the likelihood of infection on top of if you do get infected, it'll be a milder, shorter illness where hopefully because the viral load is decreased and the shedding days are decreased, you have a less likelihood of spreading it as well, ideally. Okay, sorry.
One of my chat is like, Lauren, why did you get into this debate when you aren't confident with the details? I'm not actually debating right now. I genuinely wanted to know Destiny's thoughts on these issues. Because
Oh, Caliber Champ! If you want to say some shit, knock it out. Type it in the chat. I can talk whatever the fuck. If there's one issue that I've read more on in the past 6 months of this shit, go for it. I went through every fucking bullshit ass Project Veritas video on my channel. They were all garbage. If you want to fucking talk about anything, type the message in chat or come to my chat after, my dude. We're not running from any messages.
I want my chat and Destiny's, like, your chat to understand. Like, I'm not having a debate right now. I'm trying to learn more. This is not my subject of expertise by any measure. I'm not. There are a lot of culture war stuff I can talk about, but I'm asking. I talked to a lot of my right-wing friends about this and asked their thoughts, and I'm asking your thoughts because I'm genuinely trying to gauge the subject well. And yeah, no, I respect hearing lefties' opinions, especially when they're willing to talk to me without calling me a Nazi.
Sure.
So, all right, so back to the big question I had is like the politicization, because when I look on this at face value, being like, okay, I'm not a scientist.
You don't have to believe a left-leaning politician just because a left-leaning politician does something dumb, or even a right-leaning politician does something dumb. I don't agree that that should drive you to the furthest right or furthest left position in order to rebel. You're just being controlled by them, but controlled by them in the same way, just in the opposite manner. Right? I don't think it's good.
what you're saying, but I think you can have a conversation about the problems of politicizing and lobbyist groups and these things while still not even bringing in the question of the efficacy of a vaccine into it. Especially when, if your point is to try to, if you are somebody who wants everyone to get vaccinated, then addressing the politicization of these issues would probably reduce a lot of hesitancy. I know a lot of people actually that they want to get Novavax, for example, because Novavax is made in the traditional way that most of the vaccines we get when we're kids are made, right? It's a tiny bit of the virus that your body fights off and grows an immunity to, instead of the new mRNA technology. That's the one that I would personally love to get if I were available in Canada.
Wait, okay, I gotta ask you, dude, the mRNA shit is so fucking awesome. Why would you want to go back to the fucking 1800s, like, let's rub some smallpox on you, a weakened version, and hope that you do it? Why would you want to go back to the shitty garbage way of doing it? I don't understand. Like,
because mRNA is brand new. Of course people are worried. They want to see, like, what happens. This is a brand new technology. What happens 10 years from now? Of course,
no vaccine isn't gonna, it doesn't stay in your body for 10 years. That's not how vaccines work. It's uptaken by your body.
The long-term effects.
Why are you more worried about the long-term effects of an mRNA vaccine that goes into your cell, is processed, and then is just eaten by your cytoplasm and is ejected, as opposed to putting a version of the virus in your body when actual viruses, those can live in your body for lifetimes. HIV, things like herpes, HSV 1 and 2, like there are viruses there are actual viruses that will live in your body for lifetimes. There aren't vaccines that do. It's just never happened.
Listen. The point is, you have to understand, for the regular person, they're not sitting here online all day the way you are, like doing all of these arguments about it. They're just they just see it and they're like,
yeah. So we shouldn't give them full fucking credence as if they know what they're talking about. Oh yeah, it's a super reasonable position to hold, right? That's the idea.
That's something that I've done before. That's normal. That's that's
I understand, but I'm just saying that, like,
do you get that?
No, I get it, but it's stupid. That's the problem.
That's fine.
It's like,
you can think it's stupid,
no, it's not. It is stupid. It's like the person in the corner of, like, the fucking bar, and it's like, you see that idiot with that, what is that, penicillin? Yeah, fuck that guy. I'm drinking mercury. That's what we've done it, like, traditionally. Why would you do that?
So do you think it was, like, stupid to get all these vaccines that we got as kids? Like, of course they're fine. Like, they've worked.
No, but they're better. They get better. We have better vaccines.
Great.
You know what we did as kids, Lauren? I don't know how. Okay, I remember how you. I'm 32. You know what we did as kids? We did fucking chickenpox parties. Okay, that was a garbage idea, and that's what everybody did when I was a kid. Oh, let's all go to the party.
I remember when we saw this bit, chickenpox. What is this? Like, I never did. This sounds so fucking cringe.
They get chickenpox, and now people get fucking shingles. It's not good. Okay, we improve technology, especially medical technology, and we jump along with the improvements. We don't just do things because we did them as kids. That's such a bad idea. Sorry, but that's my spiel on it.
All right. My point was that people feel more comfortable with things they know. And if the point, no matter what way they do it, like if someone is more comfortable with a certain vaccine and it passes all the tests and so far Novavax is looking good, then why wouldn't you want to push something like that as an alternative to just take the vaccine or you lose your job? And that's one approach.
I mean, they should push as many alternatives as they want. If somebody wants to get a different type of vaccine, go for it. I mean, as long as it works, I don't care what type you get.
Parents would have their young children interact with other kids who had it? Why? It's to gain immunity? Is there not a fucking chickenpox vaccine? Why not just get them the vaccine? I think chickenpox is way more dangerous as an adult. Sure. A lot of things can be. There is now? Oh, there wasn't when he was younger. I see. So it actually might make sense. That's so fucking weird.
It's got it pretty attached to
the
mRNA.
No, because on a personal level, if on a policy level, you should get whatever you want. But on a personal level, I don't know why the fuck you would want to put a fucking virus in your body when you can just train your immune system to look for a specific protein and you never have to actually get it fucking infected by anything.
It worked pretty well for me. I don't have any of the diseases, haven't gotten any of the stuff I got vaccinated for as a kid. But,
sure, that's great. But
it seemed to work pretty well.
Yeah.
All right, so Sputnik 5, I just sent you some of the information. So there are a bunch of people that got vaccinated with Sputnik, and they're not able to travel at the moment because there's been tons of studies on it too that have apparently come out with great results. They're not allowed to travel at the moment because it simply will not be approved. And a lot of people are speculating that it is purely because of political reasons. Now, I know you'll probably say, oh, we don't know that yet, but there's also other aspects that really make people nervous, like the not recognizing natural immunity. And looking at that, it's like, are they just trying to get as many people vaccinated as possible? Is this, partially, a lot of people have, I think, reasonable concerns about the pharmaceutical industry pushing things that aren't necessarily scientific. Anyone who has money to make within something, I mean, you can see almost every tobacco company testify before Congress that there's no addiction with cigarettes because obviously they had personal interest in that. And that was an official, government body they were testifying before, and, they swore under oath that this does not cause addiction. So of course people have natural concern when it comes to these pharmaceutical industries, any sort of money to be made. And when you see things like you're not even recognizing natural immunity, which so far has had great studies about its effectiveness, what is going on? Is there a political aspect to this? You look at Sputnik 5, the studies have come out great, but they're not accepting it as an official vaccine at the moment. And a lot of people are like, is it just because there's some political situation going on with the Russians? There's a general dislike of them. So the politicization, I kind of just wanted to get your take on that. Like, do you see
real quick, so
there with the politicization? Do you see?
Okay, you keep saying concerns with politicization. Okay, all of this is political. The CDC head is appointed by the President of the United States. This is a political appointment. So it is impossible to divorce public policy from politics. It is policy. It is politics. The people that are appointed are done through elected processes. So all of it is going to be, to some extent, political at the end of the day. So when you ask me, like, is it bad that it's political? I cannot think of a single public policy thing ever that is not political. By definition, by nature.
That's fine.
Sure. So I just want to say that.
Do you see the angle as, do you see
sure,
that
I understand it's bad.
I
understand. But I'm saying that, like, when somebody tries to have an argument, like, don't you think this is too politicized? My brain shuts off. Because it's like, yeah, everything is politicized. But there's no interesting conversation to be had there. Like, every single thing that has ever happened with government, by definition, it's like asking, like, how do you feel about that person? Aren't they kind of like biological? Like, I really don't like that guy. He's kind of biological. Like, well, no fucking shit. Every human is going to be. And to an extension of that, every single thing that has to be approved by a government body that has appointees that are made by elected officials is going to be political. Everything's going to be political. Now, if you want to have, like...
True. Hold up. Do you think Destiny is slowly changing his rhetoric to attack more right-wing viewers? I mean, I'm not sure if it's his rhetoric more so than just trying to argue with right-wingers because they're actually politically relevant. I think he's said as much before that he wants to have more conversations with right-wingers because of their political relevancy.
What the fuck ever. I don't care. So I don't care much about other people's social responsibilities. To me, I'll be okay. But I do expect people to have a high level of social responsibility when it comes to, like, handling my kid, right? If somebody's like a piece of shit to me in a restaurant or whatever, I don't give a fuck, whatever. But if somebody's a piece of shit to my kid, that really fucking bothers me. And I'm gonna say something that's not acceptable to me. So when you talk about, like, you know, how are we allowed to burden people? Should we force them to get vaccines? Blah, blah, blah. Like, how would you feel like if your child went to school and outside of your, you know, supervision, because you can't watch them 24/7, you know this, right? They end up getting like something like measles, something that is entirely vaccine preventable, but other people are like, well, it's my liberty to choose whether or not they do or they don't. Is that just like a trade-off where, like, you're like, oh, well, you know, it's their choice. Like,
no. There's a meme.
It is what it is. Like, at least we have our liberty, or...
I'm pretty sure my kid has his measles. That's something we vaccinate against, right?
Yeah, but there are communities. I
genuinely wondered about that. Like, what is the complaint against the people who choose not to if you're vaccinated against it and it's an effective vaccine?
So there are measles cases that are popping up again in the United States. So in 2019, there were over 1,000 cases of measles that were in the United States, and I think that those numbers are getting higher and higher. And I can push like one more. So maybe it is the case that your child is vaccinated against measles. I think measles vaccines are one of those rare ones where it's like 100% effective. But let's say that your kid grew up and let's say that they have like some kind of autoimmune disease, or they have like a sick kid. You have problems with them, and they aren't able to get like vaccines at a certain age yet because they're still kind of like compromised in ways that they can't. Like, do you just not put them in school ever, or do you hope that like people in your community have like a minimum level of respect for more vulnerable members of society, or like what is at that point? What are your feelings on it?
I think like with measles, that's, you know, we're talking something that's very, very established. We have a lot of data on that. We know that, like you said, it's pretty much a 100% effective thing. Mm-hmm. And I think that's obviously always been the problem with when people talk about the coronavirus vaccine is they're like, oh, there's data coming out saying you can still get it. It's coming out with kids, especially. I'd have to go and confirm this, but Tucker Carlson said it the other night, which I'm sure your crew will say there's no way it's true then, but he was showing that in the US there were higher suicide rates among young people than even COVID. So when it comes to the what about the kids argument, it's very unlikely.
So? And? I mean, I could target suicide amongst youth and... Wait, what is this supposed to be? Like...
With COVID, that they're actually even going to catch it, or it's even going to be dangerous for them, even in my age group. And I think we can agree on that. So that's
sure.
That's why when I looked at the initial approach, I was like, why aren't we?
For sure,
and they did this with the vaccine. They're like, let's focus on the elderly first. But instead of like shutting down all of society, why don't we focus on like the shutdown of like vulnerable groups? So
you're saying this youth suicides are as a result of the lockdown? I am probably, you know what? I'd say I'm 96%. I'll give it a 96. I'm 96% sure whoever's collecting that information on the suicide rate of kids, they are not tracking it up with the trend that we were seeing as a result of increased social anxiety and loneliness before the coronavirus in general. I think probably half of them are just taking the absolute number, and the other half are memeing. Or they're just trying to take the amount of kids that are killed specifically or have died specifically by suicide in X time frame versus the coronavirus in X time frame. And it's like, okay.
Impacts for people who generally are going to be okay if they catch the disease. Like,
sure.
Focus on the vulnerable groups.
Yeah, and I'm not asking specifically.
It is bizarre when people act like the only negative effect of corona could be like just dying.
To the coronavirus question, I'm just saying in general, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world to have like some sort of minimal expectation for how people in society act. Even understanding that even if they act perfectly, there could still be some problems, right? Like if my kid's mom got into a car accident with my kid, God forbid, and he got seriously injured, like, man, I would be like upset and that would suck really bad. And you know, it is what it is. But if she got into a serious accident with him and he got seriously injured and he wasn't wearing a seatbelt, I can't say it on Twitch. I would be livid. I would take my kid from her. She would never see him again. I would lose my fucking mind. Because it's like, bro, like you can't take the minimum level of steps to ensure some amount of safety. Are you serious? I'm not saying that like it has to be perfect or it has to be 100%. I'm just saying it just seems like in general in society, I would hope that people, when they can do things that affect others, are just taking like the minimum level of steps necessary to make sure that the people around them are relatively safe. That would be like an expectation I have because of me for sure, but then especially people that are going to be around like my child or like friends or family, I would say.
Yeah. No, I get what you're saying, because I have these arguments all the time with friends, like, especially I have these arguments with libertarians all the time and open borders people all the time. Like, yeah, it'd be great
Could
to have
COVID be the next flu? I'm the worst person to talk to about COVID. I know very fucking little. I hate, like, biology so fucking much. I think, yeah, fuck that shit.
Open borders. You know, there are a lot of questions, especially when you've got a welfare state, when you've got other countries that might invade. That you have to. What is it? It's the freedoms and order. The questions of freedom and order, and you do need a bit of order, and I'd agree with that. It's
a little
so
bit
tough,
of
though.
order. We need a little order in our lives.
States can demand these things for public health. I thought they did this around the Spanish flu time. I thought that there were...
You know what? That is going to be. I shouldn't speak for the U.S. then, because I'm looking at
Virology? I don't like biology, and biology. I imagine virology is a subsect of biology, is it not?
From Australia,
Probably biology and
Canada
chemistry,
feels
right?
insanely free compared to Australia, if I'm being real. And I know Canadians would look at me like I'm crazy because they don't feel that way all the time. But no, Australia has really gotten into it. Like cameras on people that go outside their house because they're not allowed to leave their home. Like certain hours you have to be home. So it was actually like getting to maddening points where if you had to go to work,
It doesn't seem to make it, but you know what I'm talking about. Organisms, I guess I should say. Anything that's related to organisms.
every 3 days you had to have a COVID test, you know, if you wanted to cross into Sydney. And so there were people having to wake up at like 2 a.m. and get into these test lines before they went into the city. And it was just absolute chaos.
I don't know. I haven't
She
heard any
said
about
here
it.
was
You're saying
bullshit.
every single citizen that left their house had to have a camera behind them? Or can you expand on this a little bit more?
No, sorry. In that case, they were saying there's a camera on a guy's elevator and the police tracked the dude down for going out for a nature walk that day. And they used the camera footage to identify him. Like, we're talking about someone who didn't even have COVID, who just left his house, but it was mandated that people...
Okay, so hold on, just to be
you
clear.
weren't even allowed to go out for a drive at points for a breath of fresh air in some cities.
Well, can't you just open a window? I mean,
Actually, they banned windows in some of the quarantine hotels.
wait, they
What?
actually... I'm not believing any of them.
Okay, they banned windows? What did they board up the window? How do you ban windows? Do you board up the windows?
You're telling me they actually like bulldoze hotel and they boarded up... Okay, so if your state
no
decided
windows.
if your state decided that you needed, or I don't know if you call them I don't know what you call them in Australia. If the country decided you had to be quarantined, then it's not surprising me that you would get in trouble for breaking quarantine. Like that's...
Yeah, so here we go.
But you made it sound earlier like there were cameras that followed around, and then that changed to one guy broke quarantine.
So these are just examples of things that happened. In one case, I'll get it for you right now so you can actually look at it. They used an elevator. People in my chat, can you send me some of these clips if you have them? I've posted them. You know what it's like way back in your timeline, like 2 months, 3 months. I'll have to scroll for it. But let me get I saw a story. Queensland.
So I'm trying to Google about like...
I'm not getting any search results because
I'm looking for the Australia window stuff, and I see people in general complaining that like Australian hotels are really cheap, and they lock your windows because they don't want to do maintenance, they don't want air conditioning out. Like these are articles from like 2019. It just sounds like a big investment to me that they're going to go through and they're going to board up all the windows for hotels. It also sounds pretty
there's
dystopian.
something about not allowing patios. I remember seeing the story. I will find it for you, I promise. But
How do they enforce
anyways,
that?
Australia. If you're
Do
in
they
Australia,
cut down
you have an
your
app on your phone.
patio?
Everywhere you go.
Okay, also wait, hold on. I'm
Uber.
looking at this stuff too.
Yeah.
So Anthony Karam, 27, was told by NSW Health that he had the coronavirus on August 14th and must go in isolation, and then he continued to move among the community. And I'm seeing this footage from the elevator. So this is significantly different than what you told me. I thought this was a random dude that went on a walk. Now it sounds like this motherfucker tested positive and he's going around in public.
Send me the footage because
Okay,
this
sure.
is a very different story from the one that I saw. If that's the case, I'm gonna be really upset with
This is a pretty
Okay, I'm
big
just looking because I see the picture of
throw.
like a guy in an elevator. So Anthony has failed isolated with a public health order, and despite numerous attempts by police to find him, he has not been located, a spokesperson said. It's understood the police have been able to contact him through a third party. CCTV footage shows his last known movements inside an apartment complex's elevator, and then he's seen sneezing several times inside the lift.
Jesus.
But he tested positive, and he's like moving around. Like, I think this is, if anybody deserves to get fucked by shit like this, probably this dude.
Okay, 1 minute. I don't think that's the video that I'm looking at here.
Yeah,
If that,
you can take your time. I'm
okay,
all night.
obviously, in the case where someone is violating public health order and they are actually sick, obviously that's madness. Okay, chat. There's been an Australian story where there was a guy going out for a drive. I'm positive. If that isn't true, I'm going to be very upset because I saw this story so much on my Twitter feed. And people, and I don't deny that
Sure.
it's very misrepresented sometimes if you follow only one side of Twitter feed.
I don't know.
And listen,
I'll tell you right now.
Yep.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say I did the same thing on left Twitter forever, and I learned this a year or two ago. I never ever trust headlines or Twitter like tweets anymore. I just read the article because almost every time there's like some big key pieces of information that seems to be missing, or it makes the headline like way not as bad initially as I thought. A really good example of this, and I know you're familiar with this because this is an example of a left-leaning fuck up, is I'm sure that you saw the Verge I think tweeted out that Netflix Netflix fired a trans employee that tweeted criticisms of Dave Chappelle's show. Did you see that headline?
Saw that. I didn't. So what actually happened?
Oh, so what actually happened was she tried to attend a board, I think it was like a C-level or board level meeting that she wasn't authorized to, and she tried to like sneak into the meeting and she got fired because of that. Or she didn't get fired, she got reprimanded because of that, I think. And that's significantly different than she just tweeted, right? So yeah, this definitely happens to where headlines are, it's funny because like if you go to school and you do like journalism, they tell you that like your headline is supposed to be catchy and like reel people in, but what they didn't realize is that people would only ever read headlines. So you don't actually reel anybody in, you just bait them with dumb shit and then they go and they say some crazy shit. But
yeah, I saw this the other day. You know what, the guy's nice enough, and Ian.
Also, let me tell me if this is wrong or not. Tell me if this is wrong or not. So in Australia, my understanding is that the app that exists, that's not a federally mandated app. You don't have to use it if you don't want to.
If you have to have it if you want to enter any building. You can't. They've actually got outside like Woolworths and stuff. They've got people in vests that say COVID Marshall if it's a bigger chain, and they'll make sure that you have a blue or a green check mark on your phone before you enter any stores or anything.
Are you sure this isn't like just some states? Because I've got like a lot of Aussies on my chat are like screaming like, I don't have this app. I've never heard of this app. I don't have this app.
It is based on the state, which one. So they've got like I can even show the app. Oh no, I uninstalled it after I left. But they've got like New South Wales. Actually, I can open it in the App Store probably because my phone is still registered there.
Okay, people are saying it is in Queensland, but maybe not in other.
There's a Queensland one because I've been through COVID. I've been to Canberra, Sydney, and Queensland. And all three states.
Okay, people are saying NSW and QLD have it. I don't know what NSW sounds like.
And CBD. QLD is Queensland and Canberra.
Gotcha. Okay, so it's a state by state thing.
Maybe it's not. I haven't been anywhere near the other coast, but you know what? Actually, Melbourne had it as well. So the majority of the state have it in place. And yeah, if you want to enter any building, anything like that, you gotta scan in. And,
Yikes.
Okay, let me. Yeah, what I was gonna say before is I saw this video the other day, and it was some construction workers.
My Discord.
And some guy came up to them and was yelling at them like, "None of us can open our windows with you guys out here. This is horrible. Like, F off." And the construction worker got out of his car and was going to beat him up. And it was shared as though the guy came out of his house and was saying, "No one can open our windows because none of you have masks on." But I think it was because like you didn't actually see him say that at any point. And I'm like 99% sure it was because he didn't like the power machine and the toxins and the noise that was going on. But everyone was sharing it as though it was to do with masks. And I was like, there are enough crazy people. There are enough crazy videos of people like, throwing people on the ground for not wearing masks to not post this kind of stuff, people. So I do see that all the time, and I'm genuinely going to look into this video because I'm going to be really mad if it ends that wasn't the case. Oh man. And see, my chat. This is why it's good to talk to people who don't agree with you and aren't in your circles.
Yeah, that's how it goes.
This is pretty good.
Australia,
I do commend this though. This kind of talking out and shit because the false information is not continually being spread, which is the real W. That's the real W. Yeah, it's a bit cringe.
Lived there, not just going off of the internet opinions. It's really restrictive, like shockingly restrictive, to the point where if you're moving, like if you're somebody who works in, like you move people, so you're a removalist or something, you can't even cross borders. A lot of these people have had to shut down their industries. I was moving throughout this and I called a removalist and the woman almost cried on the phone. She's like, none of our truckers can get work right now because we literally are getting so screwed over by borders and restrictions and quarantines 24/7. And this is the biggest problem is they change so often. Like it'll be extended, it'll change, the rules will shift, and each state is constant. And some states are like really small. Like if you're in Canberra, you're constantly accidentally driving into New South Wales and then ending up in quarantine if you get found having driven over the border. So it's almost gotten to the point where it's unlivable. And it really brings skepticism of like, what did that have to do with my public health, right?
Yeah, maybe. I can't say. I don't have the lived experience. And I have a lot of people screaming that it's like some people are saying that like half of Australia doesn't even act like the coronavirus exists. And, like everybody just lives normally.
If you're in rural Australia, yeah, I can imagine that for sure. But if you're in a city, your life's pretty shit right now. Like it's pretty tough if you're in a city. But if you're in rural Australia, it's like anywhere. If you have one police officer, like if you've ever lived in a small town, it's almost like laws don't exist, and they almost don't need to because everyone knows each other. So anyone who does something wrong, the whole community is gonna, fuck you up. But yeah, there's a lot of rural Australia that I can imagine just are not doing anything about it. Oh, I have a few things I need to find after that chat. The window thing.
Are you allowed to go back to Australia right now, or is the travel so restricted going in?
There's just like, because the flights keep getting canceled, it's so